I do want to address, obviously we know Deshaun Watson now out for the season. So he is done. He's tore his Achilles. If you saw the replay, you saw the Achilles tear. When it's like the calf muscle, basically like shakes, tremors, vibrates, whatever
you
it
break
is.
a guitar string and you see it like curl up.
Yeah. And it looked bad, and it was bad. Before I ask about the fans, Deshaun Watson, let me ask it this way. Will we see him play another snap for the Cleveland Browns?
No.
Why do you say that? He has 2 years left on his contract after this season.
I think it's the terminal realization that no matter what you do, if he's out for a year and you put shit back together, there's no way you risk jacking that up by putting him back in the mix again.
I 100% agree with you. And you and I agree a lot, but we also disagree on stuff. This one, I am 100% in agreement. Now, a lot of people are like, well, Aaron Rodgers came back. It's like Aaron Rodgers did it on the first play, or like the fourth play of the first game of the season. So he had a 7-week head start. He also had this other surgery that like fast tracks it and stuff. And Aaron Rodgers also looks like he doesn't look very good this year. And I know he's 40 years old, but he doesn't look very good. So, if you're hoping for, we're still waiting on the Houston Deshaun Watson to show up. Since then, he's had this shoulder injury, which no other person's had that type of surgery. He's also had now an Achilles tear. He's had 2 ACL tears in the past. I think maybe at least 2. And he's had like these other bumps and bruises. This guy is only 30 years old. He's going to be 31 though. And so he's not old, but he's not young either. So he's coming back with all these major injuries. And he's also coming back as not a beloved player of this franchise, of the league, of these fans. So that's where I'm in agreement. I think it's like, the Browns made one of the worst, if not the worst trade in NFL history. And, the Browns have done a lot of bad things. This might be right up there with, in terms of worst thing the Browns have ever done. You're bringing in what we thought was this great, talented, and he had pretty good numbers on Sunday. I think it was like 15 to 17, but it's still like this offense is pitiful. He has not been good. I think he played 18 games so far in his 2+ years with the Browns. He's played 18 games. He's 9-9 in those games. And it's, I don't think, I'm not saying it's the end of his career in the sense of, I think he'll probably catch on somewhere else because his talent is hard to pass up. But what NFL team wants to bring this guy in with the off the field stuff and the contract that he has over the next 2 years? No other team. So I think the Browns are just going to have to bite the bullet on this one.
So the girl that Johnny Depp had all of those problems with, what was her name?
Amber something.
Amber Heard, maybe?
Amber Heard. Amber Heard. Yeah.
All right. So her next boyfriend, right? Yeah. She's a shit show.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you'd invest a lot in her because, she's high maintenance and, she's just a cyclone of chaos. Right.
Yeah. Right.
You buy that. You're like, I want some of that.
Yeah.
And because of the investment, you almost feel like the impractical relationship, you have to kind of see through a little bit, even though you kind of knew that they were a little bit more chaotic than you wanted to deal with. Like the Browns have to either decide where they admit the failures of what happened 4 years ago, or they're like, all right, we let the Lamborghini sit in the parking lot. We know it wasn't practical, terrible decisions. We write it off as a mistake, like a Hugh Jackson type of thing. And we move on to a new team and pretend, put it on the ledger as a loss and a bad mistake. Sorry.
No, you're right. I mean, but the one thing that's different with Hugh Jackson and Deshaun Watson is you can let Hugh Jackson go and it doesn't cost the team anything outside of like some money you owe him. For the next 2 years, his salary cap hit, because they've, restructured his contract, is $73 million against the cap. And the cap's going to go up and up and up every single year. And there is a great guy that is a cap analyst. His name is Jack Duffin. I highly recommend just go search Jack Duffin if you're curious about salary cap, especially with the Browns. But Deshaun Watson's cap hit, $73 million for next year, where he's probably not going to play it down, and the year after. And I think if you cut him or if you trade him, there's like a $27 million cap hit in 2027. So the hits keep on coming. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think the Browns just are going to probably restructure his contract next year, restructure his contract the year after that. He has no say in that, by the way. But they're just going to keep pushing the money back, where it's going to be maybe like this Bobby Bonilla type thing where he's getting money in like
forever
30 years from the Browns. I'm sure there's some limits on that.
All right, so let's do this. Let's just say they decide on, he's no longer going to ever play an active role on that offense ever again. If he were then to, or the NFL or him were to give back value and say, this is an even deal, what would the Cleveland Browns have to get back to even out what they lost from having him on the roster?
So they're going to be, if the trajectory of the season keeps going the way it is now, they're going to have a top 3-4 draft pick. So if they identify a quarterback in the NFL draft that they deem worthy, that guy will be on a very team-friendly deal for the next 5 years. So you could live with paying a rookie quarterback that you're either bringing along, maybe you bring in a bridge guy like Joe Flacco, like maybe you keep Jameis Winston, something like that. Whereas, or maybe DTR, you give him a year and it's like, we're going to give you all of next year. If you're good, maybe you're our long-term guy. If you suck, you had your chance,
right?
You're gone. Or maybe you're our backup going forward, and we draft a guy either next year or the year after. So I don't, because if DTR, if they give him a shot next year and the Browns suck, it's like, well, he's not the guy, and they're going to have a high draft pick the following year either. So we're in a little bit of purgatory with the Browns where we don't quite know what we're doing, because this roster overall talent-wise is pretty good, but without a quarterback, you're not going anywhere.
So what? Okay, you go. I know it's early.
Yeah.
But if you were to take, let's just say we lose out the rest of the season, we get a top 5 pick. What quarterback are you going after for this offense?
So, I mean, the one there's really two. There coming into the season, there was a bunch of guys. People were talking about Quinn Ewers. People were talking about the Georgia quarterback Carson Beck. They were talking about Sanders from Colorado, Deion's son. They were talking about maybe like 4 or 5 other guys. So as we know, as the college football season plays out, things change. So to me, right now, there's only like 2 guys or maybe 3 guys that have like pushed themselves up the limit. So Deion's son, Shedeur Sanders. But to me, he's got a lot of red flags. I think he might be the most talented quarterback in the draft. I think the Georgia quarterback is out. I think Quinn Ewers could be a very good quarterback in the NFL, but I don't think he's like a top of the first round type guy. People like Cam Ward from Miami, who was at Washington State, and he's played very well, but he's another guy that's like, he's no guarantee, and none of these guys are guarantees, So I don't know.
You don't have that franchise guy coming out of this class.
Well, like, I don't think this is an elite class coming out. No. Could there be some guys that hit? Absolutely. But first round quarterbacks are kind of a coin flip. It's almost like a 50-50 proposition. It's like, are they put in the right spot to succeed? Is their talent going to transition to the NFL? Are they maybe a pocket passer? Are they an athlete? Are they a little bit of both? So I'm not ready to say like this guy, or this guy. If he's there, the Browns should take him, because I want it to play out. And I hate that we're talking about possibly drafting a quarterback in October for next year. You know what I mean? So It's one of
It's
those
a reality,
things.
man. It really is.
It's definitely a reality. So yeah.
But now, if there isn't somebody who's coming out of that class that you can see being your franchise quarterback, do you play the season differently, knowing that your quarterback thing might be an issue going into next year?
I think no, I don't. I think at that point you got to take the best player available, and then maybe you make some trades. And I don't know.
Better offensive line, and then DTR looks like a completely different dude.
Maybe.
Or Winston even.
Yeah, maybe. And when Winston came in, he looked pretty good. He looked pretty good against the Bengals, who have a decent defense too. So we'll see what happens with them. But the Browns have like a litany of things on and off the field right now. Did you see Kevin Stefanski's not calling plays anymore? So now here's what I'd put this in there. Kevin Stefanski is giving up play calling duties. Deshaun Watson is now out for the season, as we know. Ken Dorsey was brought in specifically to become the offensive coordinator to tailor an offense around Watson. Now Watson is out, and you're making him the OC now that Watson is not the quarterback. It makes no sense to me. So
if I'm Dorsey, I quit. Right? If you let me be offensive coordinator, but not call any offensive plays.
Well, I think Dorsey is not going to last through after this season with the Browns. My concern is because now what's your thoughts on Kevin Stefanski? Like, do you like him as a coach? Now he's been with the Browns, 2020. So this is his fourth year, 2020, 21, 22, 23, and now this year. So he's entering his fifth year. He's taken the Browns to the playoffs twice. He's been the coach of the year in the NFL twice. He's had two slightly down years, and this year is like the dumpster fire year. But that's the NFL. It's the nature of the beast. It's tough. So your thoughts on Kevin Stefanski as a whole?
So I'll give you 2 pros and 2 cons.
Okay.
And I think that he's a neutral for me. And if they got rid of him, I'd be okay. And if they kept him, I'd be okay.
Okay.
I think he's very stable and consistent. I think he's just, what he's going to say, what he's going to do. The con is that he doesn't allow other position coaches do their job, where he kind of like overrules sort of like the distribution of decision making.
Okay.
Him being the offensive play caller, I think had a big disservice.
Interesting.
Number 2, I want my head coach to be freaking emotional, and really take accountability instead of always this. We'll watch the tape and it's all my fault and whatever. I want call outs. I want you paid a lot of money to put numbers up on the board.
Okay.
And if you can't call somebody out for being a DB, like douchebag, not defense back, but if you can't call somebody out and really put pressure on someone to like play the best game, that is the worst waste on these high achievers.
I like that.
And on the other side, like the was that a con? Like I think I put the con in the pro thing.
Sometimes one of your negatives can lead to a positive or vice versa.
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
I do think
it's like a job interview.
All right, so I'll push that over the con. And the pro is I think the guy is really smart as a coach. And I think that he does have the capabilities. If we trust his rest of his staff and use their input and allow them to do their job, he can be a much better coach.
Okay. All right. So I would say my chair keeps sliding down on me. I'm gonna fix that. But I would say actually his strength is calling plays. So this to me, I'm worried about Kevin Stefanski making it through the year now. I'm thinking a guy that has been your coach for 4 years, and 50% of the time he's been named the best coach in the NFL. I'm worried that he's not making it through the season. I'm worried he's a little bit of a scapegoat. I'm worried he is unfortunately going to lose his job and another team's going to snatch him up. But it's like, I don't know. There's a guy in the building that is also a former coach of the year that is not on the active coaching staff. He's an analyst that you could plug probably right in there, Mike Vrabel. And I kind of like raised my eyebrow when they brought him in the offseason, because I'm like, that's a guy that like 3 or 4 teams I think probably wanted as a head coach. He's from the Cleveland area. He went to Ohio State. He was a great player in the NFL. I'm kind of wondering if Mike Vrabel might be the next head coach of the Cleveland Browns.
Do you think that was known before that, where they were transitioning him into that?
I don't think so, but I think the way the season has unfolded, that Stefanski might, like I said, be the scapegoat, but maybe they think they have a replacement and maybe a better one. Like you said, a guy that will like get in guys' faces, a defensive minded guy. Maybe you bring in an offensive minded.
All right. So you take Stefanski and Bill Belichick,
Mhm.
and you're a player that missed your assignment.
Yeah.
Are you more afraid of a Belichick, or are you more afraid of a Stefanski?
Probably Belichick. Yeah.
And I don't think he would even
Because
tear
Belichick
your
will
soul
call you
out.
No. But he'll call
But
you
his quiet calmness
Oh, yeah.
is intimidating as shit.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not afraid of Stefanski because I think he's going to be like, "Oh, we'll figure it out. It's kind of my fault,
that's
dude."
what we see, on the sideline.
That's true. That's
He's
true. We
keeping it
don't know
together.
whole set.
I don't know what he does at
In the
practice
locker
and
room, he
stuff.
could be ripping souls out.
Yeah,
Who knows?
Yeah, but I think you're right. But I think there is something to being like even keeled too, like not getting too high, not getting too low. But they're also, it's nice to see some fire once in a while. So yeah, I don't know. It's going to be very interesting for the Cleveland Browns this year. Like what happens? Their bye week is week 10. So what are they? 1-6 now. They play this week. So we're talking week 8. So is Kevin Stefanski going to make it through the month of November? I don't know. I hope, but I don't know. It's very interesting.
What are the odds? Like you put $10 on it. What do you think?
I think right now it's probably like plus 250.
I'm going to look it up.
I don't.
While you're doing this,
I don't know if that's a bettable thing, but I'm sure
it's bettable.
Like the next head coach to be fired, because has there been a head coach fired this year? I believe there has been one. The Jets head coach got fired. So the next head coach to be fired could be the Jacksonville coach. It could be Doug Peterson. Oh no, yeah, it could be Doug Peterson in Jacksonville. It could be Stefanski. So we'll see. But Stefanski's making almost $7 million a year.
All right,
so,
on the list, it looks like Matt is number 1. Stefanski is number 2 for the most likely to get fired.
Okay, all right, interesting.
And then you have Dennis Allen, and then Sean
Dennis
Payton.
Allen's bad. Yeah.
So
Sean Payton. No, Sean Payton's having a hell of a year in Denver. FLA. But
FLA.
So we'll see, but I don't know.
But yeah, as you can see, this is how they're trending over time, and it's Zach Taylor, Doug Pearson, Sean Payton,
and Zach Taylor. I mean, they're bouncing back right now since he's looking decent. All right, let me ask you this, because obviously a lot of people do not like Deshaun Watson because of his off the field, whatever, his off the field allegations, violations, whatever you want to call them. So this was not by any means the entire stadium in Cleveland that was booing him. I think it was a small percentage of fans. But what's your opinion? Now, this is a kind of a heated topic here, because obviously the Browns players came out and were not happy with what they heard on Sunday. And they're looking at this as, that's my teammate. This is a guy putting his body, his life on the line, possibly for, for his team, whether he's playing well or not. What's your thoughts on Deshaun Watson and being booed this year?
All right. So for the first thing, I think most fans really took the opportunity to not celebrate an injury, not celebrate someone getting hurt on the field, but sort of like not even happiness, but sort of like a release that finally Deshaun Watson wasn't going to be the center of attention. It gave the excuse to be able to put another quarterback or another talent there. So not claiming the injury as being the reason they were feeling, sort of like got some positive out of it, but that somebody else was. So I'm not going to say that they were cheering for injury or even celebrating or happy for injury, but now that it's presented that we had the chance to get somebody off of the field, I can see it from the Browns players' perspective, where, this is the dude that they do take risks for your enjoyment and for, for the game. And it is really in bad taste in order to when a player that has been sacrificing and taking risks, it almost feels like they're happy that you went down for the count. And so like if you were to interview the people who were expressing themselves that way, are they saying I am happy because of the injury? I would say almost none of them. They would all say what you said, which is the injury is not what I'm gleeful about. It's the prospect of getting the person I disagreed with off the field and giving someone else a chance.
Yeah, I think that's well said.
So let me ask you this question. So now you're on the Browns staff, you're a player, and you know how much the fans had turned on somebody, and your feeling is that they were happy about somebody getting injured.
Yeah.
Are you now not a big fan of the fans and take that element out of the game day?
No, because I think the Cleveland Browns fans truly are the most loyal in the entire NFL, maybe in all of sports, because of everything they have gone through. You know, the drive, the fumble, all the bad draft picks, the 0-16, 1-15, all that stuff. And the team freaking leaving and moving and coming back. It's been, these fans have been through more hell than any other fan base.
I bet
and they still show up.
I bet you can't think of 5 players who went on the fan shit list over the course of the last 10 years.
No.
I'm going to say Deshaun Watson is number 1.
Oh, yeah.
OBJ is number 2.
He's up there.
Yeah.
I would say, because Baker Mayfield was very polarizing. People loved him or hated him. So I would put Baker on
Baker's
that list.
on that list.
Yeah.
Even though that was in the end, after the fact, that they didn't have, I mean, all right. So
Baker was awful in 2022.
He was
awful.
But in the end,
yes,
if we gave him enough time, he may have done what he did.
Yeah. And I actually have a good hypothetical for you in a little bit that will I know.
Can you come up with 2 more that have really been on the shit list for Browns fans?
Oh, Johnny Manziel.
Okay.
Johnny Manziel, I put right towards the top. Maybe Josh Gordon. It's like, stay off the weed.
Yeah,
and
well,
you
that was
could
more
be the
disappointment than hatred.
Yeah, not hatred.
No.
Not hatred. Yeah, hatred is tough because like, first of all, I think you have to give the fans hope before you come in, and then maybe some bad draft picks in there, but Justin Gilbert was so bad.
What a mess.
He was so bad. And like you look at some of the guys. Oh, Anthony Schwartz.
Yes.
Anthony Schwartz.
Yeah.
I've almost like put his name out of my memory, but yeah, he was like, they took him ahead of a lot of players. I think they took him ahead of like Cooper Kupp and some other players, and that guy was hated.
Yeah, I can think of, there's a quarterback, a defensive back, a tight end, and a wide receiver that we just missed so bad on.
We've missed on
defensive backs most off. I think that's, between quarterbacks and defensive
Justin Gilbert was so bad.
Oh, so bad.
So bad. Well, quarterbacks have been, come
that's
on.
Number 1.
Yeah,
sure.
Quarterbacks number 1. And then maybe, defensive backs after that. But it's been, it's tough being a Browns fan. And, last year we had so much hope. We had really the last 4 years, the Browns have been fun, at least. At the very least, they've been fun. Disappointing maybe in 2022, but they were still competitive. They were still good. And 2021, the season after the playoff run, they didn't have a great year, but they were fun. They were competitive. They were in games. And then this year has just been, it's like the season from hell. It really is. It's been the season from hell.
Now, did you like Courtney Brown, by the way?
I did like Courtney Brown.
I was too.
I
he had a lot of hatred from people.
Yeah,
but I liked him.
He had a lot of injuries too. That I think that kind of affected his performance too. Where
Jack Conklin-esque.
Jack Conklin.
Yes.
It's been Jack Conklin at least has given some. He's earned some of his money from this team. Like there's been guys like Dwayne Bowe who they signed for $6-7 million who came in and made like one catch in the entire season, and just been like a complete waste.
I honestly love this experimentation. You bring like a Clowney who's got some potential, and if it doesn't pan out, I mean, that was at least a worthwhile deal. You didn't overinvest in it.
And Clowney was good one of the 2 years he was in Cleveland. I think he had like 10 sacks the 1 year. So
and when I'm watching Oregon and I'm seeing this dude like blow it up, I'm like, I hope that's someone that's in the the crosshairs for the Browns.
Sure, right, yeah. And I mean, there's I don't know. This team, this could go a lot of different ways.
But do you see, we had a conversation here about something that was rather dismal and disappointing, and we found a way to prop it up on some stilts of optimism.
It's not as bad as it used
to be. It's been worse before.
And I think, as we mentioned, the best hope for this team, for this franchise, the best, and it's probably a long shot. The NFL is still investigating the last Deshaun Watson case. So if he gets suspended, they could possibly void that contract. And again, I'm not wishing him injury. I don't, I it is what it is. Like like you said,
so hold on.
The people aren't booing his injury. They're booing, they don't like him as the representative for the Cleveland Browns. And we've talked about this before. It's not fun to root for this team because you have a guy that's thought of as a predator on the field, and not a predator in the good sense of like the movie type that can go dominate all. This is a guy that's like a sexual deviant, we think, on the field. And Steelers fans could get past that with Ben Roethlisberger, but he at least was a good quarterback on the field. Like, when things might be going well on the field and you can maybe look past some of the off the field stuff, it's like, well, both things are bad right now. So
all right, so 3 things to take away.
Okay.
Let's just say we get our cap space back by being able to annul the contract. We get 11 draft picks so we can rebuild our offensive line. And we get an offensive coordinator that can actually call plays.
Okay.
Next year, is there optimism, or are we looking for a couple years of rebuilding?
Let's go back to setting that bar low and hopefully
all right. 3
exceeding.
inches over the
So
path.
I'm thinking like the offense is literally as bad as it gets right now. The defense played well against the Bengals.
I agree.
They gave up literally like the first kickoff of the game. The Bengals scored a touchdown. I think the defense gave up 2 touchdowns, but one was like, it was a short drive. So really they held the Bengals to 14 points. If you hold a team to 14 points in the NFL, you should win. You should win. And the Browns offense just was so bad. But Jameis Winston was one of the guys that scored. He threw that touchdown to Njoku, and so I really don't know what to say. I think it's too early to go into like prognosticating for next season, but
you're a Browns fan. It's never too early to start looking at the draft.
Well, I know we're looking at the draft, but I'm talking about.
I set the horizon for you. Yeah. So you like the defensive backs, you like our defensive squad. So you're taking a limit. Let's just say
what I will say though is I think this team, there's a lot of pieces that are going to get moved in the next couple weeks.
Well, take my hypothetical.
Okay.
You just keep the defense that you have right now, no changes whatsoever. You use the money that you have to be able to keep all the talent that you have on the defensive side of the ball.
Okay.
You got 11 picks. You got the cleared up cap space to fill in your offensive holes for the next year, and you've got an offensive coordinator that can figure out how to take a brand new offense and make use of them to put points on. So your defense is holding low scoring, low scoring points on the board, and you now got a fresh offense that you were able to draw all of your money, all of your new draft picks in, and an offensive coordinator. Now, does your hope live there?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, but it still comes down to who is my quarterback. Is it Joe Flacco? Is it Jameis Winston? I know it's not going to be Deshaun Watson for at least half or probably all of next year. Is it Dorian Thompson-Robinson? Who knows what we have in him? Is it one of the rookies in the draft this year?
See, I disagree with you because I think the reason that Joe Flacco looks so good is because we actually had an offensive line that could deliver something and protect the quarterback and give him
the offensive line was pretty banged up when
but
Joe
still better
Flacco
than this
playing.
year. It was
definitely
better than this year.
Yeah.
So you put Deshaun Watson in Joe Flacco's position, and he may have done a ton better than he did.
Let me say this.
Yeah.
let's revisit this in 2 weeks. Give Jameis Winston 2 weeks, see what he does. Let's give him 3 weeks. So we'll give him up to the bye. So they got 3 games before the bye, or 2 games. I don't know what it is. Either 2 or 3 before the bye. By the way, Jameis Winston will be the Browns' 38th starting quarterback since 1999. The next closest team has 30.
No shame in that. We're not ashamed.
But I say give him these next couple weeks, see how he performs, see how the offensive line looks with him. Maybe he's getting the ball out quicker. Maybe he's able to connect with some of these wide receivers that are trying to make a name for themselves, like a Jamari Thrash, who they drafted this year, like a Cedric Tillman, stuff like that. All the blame, as we have said throughout the season, should not be on Deshaun Watson. A lot of the blame should be on this terrible offensive line, which has been a staple. Even when the Browns were bad, the offensive line was good. So it's like the Browns have a lot of room for improvement on the offensive end. And I think even a little bit of improvement will look good. So I don't know.
But you got 4 players on your offensive line playing out of position and playing into roles that's not their strong suit. I mean, you just shore that up, and now you have a 1-for-1 for what Flacco enjoyed last year, and that would be a 1-for-1 comparison.
Yeah, but you don't have Amari Cooper anymore. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't. But you do have Nick Chubb back too, I guess. So,
I'm just trying to bring you up a little. I'm trying to rub your balls just a little bit to just make you see the optimistic side of things.
Fair. That's fair. Okay. Have you seen this stat though?
No.
Okay. This stat is kind of mind blowing. So, this is hard to read, but it says, have you scored 20 points in a game in 2024? Every single college football team can answer yes. Okay. Mm-hmm. Every single NFL team, except for the Cleveland Browns, can say yes. And yes, but we call them runs. The Dodgers, the Rockies, and the Oakland Athletics have even scored more runs or points than the Cleveland Browns in a single game. Also, last night was the Cavs' first game. Evan Mobley at halftime had 19 points, which outscored the Cleveland Browns in any given game this season. The Browns were putting up like 30, 40 points in some games last year. They can't get to 20. 18 is their highest output this season, which is very, very, very sad. So, now Nick Chubb was the silver lining to last week's game, because the great thing coming out of the locker room in the opening introductions, he is the last piece of goodwill the Browns have. Everybody loves Nick Chubb. And I'm talking about players even on the freaking Baltimore Ravens, Pittsburgh Steelers, Cincinnati Bengals, all around the NFL. Every single player, every single coach, every single fan, even maybe not loves Nick Chubb, but respects Nick Chubb as a player, because he is the glue guy for the Browns. However, it's like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Like, Nick Chubb can't do it all. If the offensive line stinks, it's not going to, he can't do it all for you. So I love that Nick Chubb scored the touchdown last week. It was awesome to see him get in the end zone. It was awesome to see him get back on the field. Had no lingering injuries after the game. So that was good to see him bounce back, take some hits, be that guy we know he can be. So hopefully he can ramp up, but I also don't want to waste him for, if we can get it together and figure it out for next year. But at the same time, it's like, these guys have a shelf life. You got to play them when you can play them. Now, here's the Browns schedule the rest of the season. Baltimore this week at home. Then you got the Chargers at home. Then you got a bye week. So 2 more games. So we're giving Jameis Winston 2 weeks to see what he can do. If he plays well, I think you give him the rest of the season. If he struggles, I think you use that bye week to get Dorian Thompson-Robinson ready, maybe to play at that game at New Orleans. So, Joe, I'm going to ask you this real quick. So Baltimore, the Chargers, then you got New Orleans, Pittsburgh on a Thursday night, Denver on a Monday night, Pittsburgh again, F. John Elway, the Chiefs, the Bengals, the Dolphins, and the Ravens again. So Out of those, let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games. What's the Browns? How many of those 10 games are the Browns winning? How many games would you say?
1, 2.
I know you're going to have them beating Denver just because FL way.
I'm going to go with 3.
3? That's kind of where I'm at. I'm at like 2 or 3 games. I can see him beating the Dolphins.
Yes.
I can see him probably somehow splitting with the Steelers because no matter how good or how bad the Browns are, I feel like they usually can play the Steelers tight. That New Orleans game looks interesting. I don't know.
What about Cincinnati? I think Cincinnati's more vulnerable. They've got good numbers that they put up, but I think that they are incomplete.
I mean, they're gettable. I mean, the Browns very well almost beat them last week. But it is what it is. So, it stinks. I don't know. I don't have a whole lot of hope.
By then, we'll have Bobby Boucher as the quarterback, so we'll be good.
Right.
100%.